Welcome to the deep dive. So if you've ever, found yourself hiding behind a cushion during a horror movie,
Uh-huh.
or maybe scrolling through those really chilling online discussions late at night,
Yeah, definitely done that.
chances are you've come across the work, or at least the legacy of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Oh, absolutely. Their cases are everywhere in pop culture. Blockbusters like the Conjuring films, the Amityville Horror.
Right, and just countless online debates too. But have you ever stopped and wondered about the real stories? You know, behind the Hollywood versions.
And that's exactly what we're doing today. Our mission is to dive deep, really deep, into the actual investigations of Ed and Lorraine Warren.
These self-proclaimed demonologists, paranormal investigators.
Exactly. We've gathered a whole stack of different sources for you, personal accounts, academic articles, public discussions, historical records, you name it.
The whole shebang.
Pretty much. And the goal is to pull out the most important bits, those nuggets of knowledge. Maybe some surprising facts, too. Basically, help you understand what's really important in all this material, cutting through the noise.
That's the plan. You'll learn about their unique methods. We'll dig into some of their most famous cases.
And maybe some you haven't heard as much about.
Yeah, and crucially, we're going to explore all the different viewpoints, including the intense skepticism surrounding their controversial legacy.
It's not just about what happened.
No, it's about why it matters, right?
Yeah.
And what it might mean for how we understand the paranormal. Okay, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So let's start right at the beginning. Who were these people? Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Okay, Ed Warren. He passed away back in 2006. He was a self-taught demonologist based in the USA.
Self-taught?
Yep, really focused on spirituality, ghosts, demons. But he had this interesting belief. He think people shouldn't rely on books.
Really? For demonology?
Yeah, he pushed for trusting your own inner wisdom instead.
What does that tell us about how he approached things?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? This inner wisdom idea, it suggests he wasn't tied to rigid rules or texts.
More intuitive.
Exactly. For someone self-taught, it gave him a lot of flexibility. He could tackle diverse cases without being, boxed in by traditional theories, almost like he was mapping his own path in this field.
Okay, and then there was Lorraine Warren. She passed much more recently, 2019. And she was different, a psychic, a medium.
Right. She said she first realized her abilities when she was just 9 years old.
Wow, so young.
Yeah. Claimed she could see things not of this world, like lights around people.
Auras, basically.
Sort of like that, yeah. And she said she could know things she never should have known, even communicate with beings in her mind.
Communicating mentally. So how did her abilities fit into their investigations?
Well, it seems like Lorraine's input, seeing lights, communicating mentally, that was probably the intuitive core of their work.
Well, Ed handled the demonology side.
Kind of. Ed had focused more on the, let's say, confronting the entities, the ritualistic stuff. Lorraine provided the insights like, what is this thing? What does it want? And it guided their approach in the moment.
So this combination, self-taught demonology and psychic perception, that was their engine.
Pretty much, yeah. That combination was key.
And their partnership itself, it's quite a story. They met super young, right? 16?
That's right, 16. Lorraine apparently said she knew right away he was the one.
And then in 1952, they started the New England Society for Psychic Research, AASPR.
Yep. And their main goal was clear: investigate paranormal cases. They claimed over 10,000 cases investigated over the years.
10,000. That's a
Yeah,
lot.
it is. And they often worked with others: doctors, nurses, researchers, even police sometimes.
So they weren't always just working alone.
No, not always. They traveled a lot, basically, to help people who experienced paranormal events.
And this help included things like exorcisms.
Yes, performing exorcisms and also taking possessed objects back to their home.
Which leads to the museum.
Yeah.
But first, the money. How do they fund all this travel and work?
Well, this is a big point of discussion. They always maintain they never charged for their services.
Never.
Only asked clients to cover travel costs and expenses, which, that no-fee policy is kind of a smart PR move.
How so?
It frames them as purely altruistic, right?
Yeah.
Makes it harder to just dismiss everything as a money grab.
Even though they did make money later from books and movies?
Exactly. They profited significantly from books, lectures, films down the line. But the initial service was supposedly free, just covering expenses.
Okay, and those possessed objects they collected? They ended up in the occult museum.
That's the one, located right in their home in Monroe, Connecticut. In the basement, I think.
Full of all sorts of possessed items, including the most famous one.
Annabelle.
Right. And the museum, it still exists.
It does, yeah. Managed by their son-in-law, Tony Spera. It's really quite something.
You really can't make this stuff up. Okay, let's get into the cases, some of the big ones.
Where should we start? Annabelle.
Has to be Annabelle, right? In spite of a whole universe of movies. So the story starts back in 1970. A nurse named Donna buys a doll.
A Raggedy Ann doll, specifically, from an antique shop.
And almost immediately, things start happening.
Pretty soon after, yeah. Donna reported having terrible nightmares, waking up with scratches on her body.
Physical marks?
Uh-huh. And the doll itself. It apparently moved on its own.
How so?
Well, they'd find it in different rooms, sometimes in different positions, like its arms or legs crossed, even after they put it back somewhere specific.
Okay, that's creepy.
Then came the notes. Ominous messages like, "Help us," or "Help me,"
Written by?
in what looked like a child's handwriting, appearing on paper they didn't even have in the house.
Whoa.
And it escalated. There was a physical attack reported. A friend of Donna's was supposedly thrown across a room.
Thrown?
Yeah, and ended up with 7 claw marks. They apparently bled, but then healed fairly quickly.
Claw marks that heal quickly. Very specific. I mean, what made the Warrens decide this was demonic?
Well, the Warrens were called in after others. Even a priest couldn't figure it out or stop it, so it already escalated.
Okay.
They came in, assessed it, and pronounced it demonically possessed. That's a big statement.
And then they took it.
Moved it straight to their museum. But the weirdness didn't stop there, according to them.
What else happened?
Years later, like at a lecture in 1987, they claimed the doll was still active, giving psychic slashes to people it didn't like, drawing blood.
Psychic slashes, seriously.
That's the claim.
Yeah.
They also told a story about a priest who apparently challenged Annabelle.
What happened to him?
He supposedly crashed his car right after leaving their house. Ed Warren apparently said something like, "No doll or demon is stronger than God, but a demon is stronger than a man or a priest."
Wow. That's intense. So the doll's reputation just kept growing.
Absolutely. They claimed incidents happened at the museum, too. A man apparently mocked Annabelle during a visit.
Yeah.
Died in a motorcycle accident on his way home. The Warrens called it a crazy coincidence.
Coincidence.
And just recently, May 2025, there is this big online buzz about Annabelle disappearing from the museum.
I think I remember that. It went viral.
It did, but it turned out to be viral marketing.
Marketing? For what?
For a tour, apparently, called Devils on the Run. They were taking the doll to different places for paranormal fans to see.
Viral marketing. That just plays right into the critic's hands, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure.
Do the sources say how, like, the Warrens family or son-in-law reacted to using the doll like that? Because you see people on Reddit saying Annabelle is basically a Twilight Zone episode, just another hoax.
The sources don't detail the family's specific reaction to that marketing stunt, no. But generally, their camp tends to frame ongoing interest, even like this, as proof of the doll's power and influence.
Well, the critics see it
as more evidence of commercial exploitation, undermining the original story. It really shows that tension, you know? Belief versus business.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, speaking of unsettling stuff, let's move to another huge case. The Perron family haunting, the one that inspired The Conjuring.
Right. Harrisville, Rhode Island. January 1971. Carolyn and Roger Perron move into this big old farmhouse with their 5 daughters.
5 kids in a potentially haunted house.
Oh.
Recipe for disaster.
Well, it started small, apparently. A missing broom, things like that.
It could be anything.
But it escalated, quickly became full-fledged angry spirits.
Angry spirits.
Plural. According to the daughter, Andrea Perron, yes, she believed one spirit named Bathsheba was the main problem. Described as a very scary-looking woman with a twisted neck. Andrea thought Bathsheba saw herself as the mistress of the house and really resented her mother, Carolyn.
Wow. And other things happened.
Oh, yeah. Beds supposedly levitated. The house would smell like rotting flesh. The basement had this cold, stinking presence. Andrea's account is key here, giving that personal perspective.
Levitating beds, rotting flesh. It sounds like classic horror movie stuff, but actually living it? Shudder.
Yeah.
So the Warrens got involved.
They made frequent trips to the house over several years.
What do they do? An exorcism.
Apparently not a full exorcism. They did a seance because they believed the mother, Carolyn, was only being attacked, not fully possessed.
Okay. And did the seance work?
No. According to the sources, it horribly failed.
Failed how?
It supposedly opened some portal and just made the entity angrier and stronger.
Oh, wow. That's not good.
Not at all. And apparently the Perron family kicked them out right after that seance.
They kicked the Warrens out.
That's the report, which really challenges that image of the Warrens as always being the solution, you know?
Definitely. And the family.
They had to keep living in the house for another 7 years after the Warrens left. Carolyn reported feeling just immense sadness there.
7 more years.
Yeah.
Awful. And the skepticism.
Yes, some critics, like one Reddit user cited, claim the Warrens actually made things worse, did things the family specifically asked them not to do.
And there's even a story about the dad.
Some accounts say Roger Perron actually punched Ed in the face and kicked them out.
Whoa, okay. So, did the Warrens help? Or did they just stir things up? That's the question there.
Exactly. It adds a lot of complexity.
Right. Okay, from one movie inspiration to another, maybe the most famous haunted house story ever, Amityville.
Ah, yes, the Amityville Horror, the house on Long Island, site of the DeFeo murders in 1974.
Where Robert DeFeo Jr. killed his whole family.
6 family members. He claimed he was visited by a black figure who gave him the gun, told him to kill his parents, later said he heard voices. Chilling backstory.
Definitely sets a grim stage. Then, a year later, 1975, the Lutz family moves in. George, Kathy, and their kids.
Right. And the house was notoriously so cheap, $80,000, which was apparently almost twice their budget, but still a steal for that location.
And they kept all the DeFeo furniture.
They did, which many find odd. Almost immediately, things started. A priest came to bless the house. Heard a voice booming, "Get out!"
Classic.
And George Lutz started waking up every single night between 3:40 and 3:15 a.m.
Which was the time of the murders.
Exactly. That detail, the consistency, it's really eerie.
And it got worse.
Oh, yeah. The youngest daughter made an imaginary friend.
Let me guess, not so imaginary.
Apparently not. Name was Jody, described as a demonic pig with red eyes.
A pig.
A demonic pig. George supposedly saw it too. And they found pig tracks in the snow outside.
Pig tracks in the snow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's bizarre.
What else? Kathy had terrible nightmares. They found a hidden room in the cellar.
A hidden room. What was in it?
Blood red walls, bite marks, and that smell again, rotting meat. Plus, the family claims slime oozed from the walls, knives flew off counters, furniture moved on its own.
A whole 9 yards of haunting.
Pretty much. George apparently couldn't get out of bed sometimes. Kids' beds were thrown up and down. It was intense.
So the Warrens came in after the Lutzes fled.
Correct. The Lutzes lasted just 28 days, fled on January 16th, 1976, leaving everything behind. Then the Warrens investigated.
What did they report finding?
Lorraine described feeling immense sadness and heaviness. Ed was supposedly pressed to the ground at one point, couldn't get up.
And there's something about the book manuscript being cursed.
Yeah, one source mentions that. People who handled the manuscript for the Amityville Horror book supposedly had really bad things happen. A sudden car fire, someone died in a fire, but the manuscript was untouched. Creepy stories.
Given all that, how do the Warrens deal with the inevitable skepticism? Because Amityville is probably the most debated haunting.
Hugely debated.
You have Reddit users flat out saying the whole Amityville haunting was a hoax, made up by George Lutz, which would mean the Warrens' findings were based on nothing real.
Right. Or others suggest maybe the house wasn't haunted, but George himself was. Maybe he was messing with the occult, open portals.
But how did the Warrens counter that?
They generally stuck to their guns, pointing to the family's distress as evidence and highlighting their own experiences in the house. But you're right, this case really epitomizes that core issue, verifying subjective experiences linked to trauma.
And the alternative theory, that George Lutz caused it himself, either intentionally or not.
That's a major skeptical viewpoint. Shifts the focus from the place to the person. Did he bring something with him? Or was it psychological? Lots of questions.
Okay, let's hop across the pond now. Enfield, England. The Enfield poltergeist, basis for the Conjuring 2.
Right. This one took place between 1977 and 1979, so about a year and a half of activity.
Centered on the Hodgson family.
Peggy Hodgson, a single mother, and her 4 kids. But the main focus was the 11-year-old daughter, Janet.
What were the first signs?
Started with knocking sounds all through the house, but then police were called.
And the police saw something.
Yes. Officers witnessed a chair moving on its own and actually shooting across the room.
At least witnesses. That adds weight.
It does. Then things really escalated. Objects flying, Legos and marbles flew across the room and were hot to the touch.
Hot to the touch. Weird detail.
Yeah. Clothes leapt off of tabletops. Furniture spun around. Lights flickered. They heard phantom barking dogs.
And it all centered on Janet.
Seemed to follow her, yes. Wherever Janet was, stuff happened. One investigator, Maurice Gross, noted a kid's book called Fun and Games for Children just fell off a shelf near her. Eerie.
And the really scary stuff involving Janet herself.
Reportedly thrown from her bed by something unseen. There's that famous photo of her apparently mid-air.
Which skeptics say is just her jumping.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Highly debated. Neighbors reported seeing a woman with gray hair and an evil grin in the window, who then just vanished.
The creepy figure.
And Janet started channeling spirits, speaking in a totally different voice.
What kind of voice?
Described as a deep male voice. Supposedly belonged to a man named Bill Wilkinson, who claimed he died in that house.
And they tried to debunk the voice.
Yeah, they apparently made her hold water in her mouth, and the voice was still heard, trying to prove she wasn't faking it ventriloquist style.
Wow, and physical harm too.
She'd wake up with scratches, other injuries. Once her nightgown was wrapped around her neck like an attempted strangulation.
Terrifying for a child.
Absolutely. Plus, the house often smelled of smoke with no fire. And Peggy, the mom, and Margaret, another daughter, both independently saw an old man figure.
So, lots of witnesses, lots of phenomena. What was the Warrens' actual role here? The movie makes it seem central.
Surprisingly limited, actually. Because of the distance, USA to England, they only visited a single time.
Just once.
Just once. Janet apparently felt a kind of relief when Lorraine showed up. The Warrens concluded something evil or demonic was there.
And their advice.
Get a priest to cleanse and bless the house, which they did, and it apparently brought calm, at least temporarily.
Okay. And the aftermath of this one. Anything noteworthy?
Well, it's quite poignant, really. Peggy Hodgson stayed in the house, and years later she strangely died in the same armchair where Bill Wilkinson, the channeled spirit, claimed he had died.
Whoa. That's a coincidence, to say the least.
The very eerie one. And the next family who moved in, the Bennetts, they reported feeling uncomfortable, kids heard unusual noises, saw an old man.
So the activity continued.
Seems like it, which believers point to. But skepticism-wise, it's crucial to note the film The Conjuring 2 really exaggerated the Warrens' involvement.
Made them seem like the main investigators.
Pretty much. And some critics claim the Warrens forced their way in, maybe angered the spirit, and actually caused more harm than good.
Another case where their intervention is questioned. Adds another layer, doesn't it?
It really does. It's never simple.
Okay, back to the U.S. The Smurl family haunting. This sounds like a really long, difficult one.
It was. West Pittston, Pennsylvania. Jack and Janet Smurl, their two daughters and Jack's parents, they moved into a duplex in 1973 after a hurricane.
House condition.
Very dilapidated, but crucially, very cheap. The family was also described as very religious.
Did the trouble start right away?
Well, interestingly, there were reports from before they even moved in. A daughter saw people in her bedroom back in 1965.
Before the Smurls lived there.
Apparently. But the main stuff started for the Smurls in 1973. Banging sounds, scratch marks on fresh paint, objects disappearing, appliances going haywire.
Standard poltergeist activity, maybe?
Started that way. But by 1977, it turned physically harmful.
Oh, so.
Scratch marks started appearing on the bodies of the family, not just the walls.
Oh, wow.
By 1985, the scratches increased. Janet was reportedly levitated and pressed against the wall.
Levitation again.
And the entity apparently showed itself to Jack as a monster-like being.
A visual manifestation.
Yeah. And maybe the most chilling part, it followed the family.
Followed them where?
On vacation. Even when they moved to a new home later, it just got stronger and stronger, supposedly by feeding on negative energies.
Following them. That's terrifying. It's not the house, it's them.
So the Warrens came in.
They did. Ed used his usual approach with religious objects to try and lure out demons.
And Lorraine?
As the medium, she identified 4 beings in the house.
4.
3 human and 1 non-human evil being, which she believes was the one attacking the family.
Did they interact with it?
Well, the demon reportedly manifested and said to Ed, "You filthy bastard, get out of the house." Charming. Did exorcisms help?
2 were tried by priests, but they were unsuccessful, actually made the demon even angrier, and it kept following the family.
So what did the Smurls do?
They got desperate and turned to the press for help.
Went public.
Yeah, which brought media attention, but also loads of skeptics accusing them of just wanting money.
But did they?
Interestingly, the source notes the family rejected film offers, which for that source makes their claim seem much more credible, suggesting it wasn't just about profit.
Any other investigators involved?
Another medium, Mary Alice Rinkman, also investigated and independently confirmed 4 beings in the house.
Corroboration.
Of a sort. Finally, in 1989, a final exorcism by a priest supposedly straight out of the Vatican finally brought them peace.
A long, tough road for them.
Definitely sounds like it. The fact they turned down film money is an interesting wrinkle in the usual skepticism.
Okay, now for something really different. The werewolf case. Bill Ramsey.
Yeah, this one is bizarre. His name was actually Maurice Frenchy Theriot, but often referred to as Bill Ramsey in this context. Born 1953, small religious village in Maine.
Background.
Tough childhood. Abusive father. Turned to religion initially, but then supposedly dabbled in the dark side. Rumors of black magic.
Okay, sets the stage. When did the werewolf stuff start?
First episode was young, age 9 or 10. He experienced this extreme cold, started growling, then passed out. Called it an animalistic attack.
And then it stopped.
Went dormant for about 15 years.
Until?
Started up again in 1985 when he was an adult. After drinking in a bar, felt that coldness again, looked in the mirror and saw a wolf.
Saw a wolf in his reflection.
That's the claim. Later, he apparently attacked a friend in a car, bit him, had no memory of it afterwards.
Amnesia after attacks.
Yeah. He worked as a taxi driver, bit a nurse who tried to draw his blood. Reports say he had incredible strength, threw furniture, was growling.
This sounds less like a werewolf, more like taking violent episodes.
Well, he described being overcome by rage. He howled. He bit a police officer. He also reported having visions of running through the forest with wolves.
Okay, the visions add a strange layer.
He apparently got desperate, considered suicide if the attacks didn't stop.
So, enter the Warrens. How did they get involved?
They heard about his case while they were in London, actually. Lorraine convinced Ed they needed to investigate.
And her cake.
Lorraine suspected possession by a wolf. Lycanthropy, basically, but framed as possession.
Did Bill want an exorcism?
Initially refused, but then he apparently threatened his wife during an attack, and that changed his mind. He agreed.
Where did it happen?
In a hotel room in Connecticut, 1989.
And the exorcism itself, what did the Warrens report?
They claimed his pupils narrowed to slits like a reptile's. That he said, quote, I am what I am the legend of evil.
Dramatic.
Then he collapsed. His physical wounds began to heal, and he woke up as if from a trance. That's the Warrens' version.
But there's skepticism here, too. Big time.
Huge skepticism. Bill's own sister, Dana, came forward.
What did she say?
Called him an excellent actor, said he faked the incidents, used fake blood, even inflicted the crosses on himself.
Faked everything.
According to her, yes. She also said the strange language he spoke wasn't Latin backward, just a mix of Latin and French.
So the source analyzing this,
yeah,
what's the takeaway?
It really questions, was he really possessed or just a criminal trying to excuse his acts? It's a case that really highlights that line between potential supernatural events, psychological illness, and maybe just plain old deception.
Yeah, that one's really murky. Okay, another movie title case, The Haunting in Connecticut.
Right, 1986. Alan and Carmen Snedeker moved their family, 4 kids, 2 nieces, into a house in Connecticut.
Why that house?
It was close to a hospital where their oldest son, Philip, was being treated for cancer. And familiar story, it was very cheap.
But they didn't know its history.
Not at first. They later found out it used to be a funeral home morgue from 1936 to 1980.
A former morgue. Yikes. Did they find evidence?
Yeah, they found actual toe tags, the kind used for bodies, down in the basement.
Okay, that's undeniably creepy. How did the haunting start?
Philip, the son with cancer, reportedly felt the house was evil right from the beginning.
And the phenomena.
Doors opening and closing by themselves, lights flickering, standard stuff, but also objects disappearing like crosses they put on doors vanished. Dishes would apparently restack themselves after being washed.
Restacking dishes? That's oddly specific.
Isn't it? And Carmen reported the mop water turning red while she was cleaning the floor.
Like blood.
That was the implication. And the most disturbing claim. One of the children was reportedly sexually assaulted by a demon.
Oh, that's incredibly dark. That detail alone.
It really is. So the family sought help. Paranormal researchers, including Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Did the Warrens move in for this one?
Temporarily, yes. Along with their nephews, John Zaffis and John McCann, who were also psychic researchers.
And what did they experience?
They reported things like hearing animalistic growling. Ed apparently suffered from sudden chest pains while he was there.
So they corroborated the family's claims to an extent.
It seems so. Eventually, the house was exorcised.
And did it work?
The family reported it felt as if spring had returned to the house. They moved away to Tennessee afterwards.
But again, Skepticism.
Of course. Skeptics point to the family's known financial struggles.
The money angle again.
Yeah. And the fact they later profited from books and films based on their story, it raises questions about motive.
Was the morgue story confirmed?
Well, a landlord reportedly denied the house was ever a morgue, but the YouTube source analyzing this felt instinctively that it probably was, thinking a landlord would deny that to be able to re-rent it.
Plausible deniability.
Exactly. So skeptics generally feel many details were likely exaggerated. It's another case where separating experience from potential sensationalism is really tricky, especially with money involved later.
Right. Okay, one last specific location. Union Cemetery in Connecticut. Ed Warren apparently called it one of the most haunted places in the U.S.
That's what he claimed. It's known for reports of seeing the woman in white weeping, seeing orbs, glowing lights. Classic cemetery phenomena.
And Ed investigated personally.
He claimed he spent 7 nights there trying to capture evidence.
What did he report seeing?
He said he saw the White Lady between 3 and 4 a.m., the witching hour,
Of course.
heard her weep, saw diverse orbs. But here's a weird detail. He tried to film her. Every time he looked through the viewfinder, he saw nothing. But when he lowered the camera, she was supposedly right in front of him.
Can't see you through the lens. Odd.
Very. He also claimed she was being redirected or controlled by 2 black dog-like entities that gave off very strong negative energy.
Demon dogs.
Sounds like it. He did claim he managed to capture her image when he reviewed the tape later, but the quality is apparently debatable.
Anyone else see her?
Yes, other accounts exist. A young boy named Ryan saw her floating, wearing an old-fashioned veil and wedding dress, and she seemed to be with dark figures who were arguing with her.
Arguing with the ghosts.
That's what he reported. Also, a homeless man saw her glowing and moving through the tombstones.
And the Warrens had a theory about ghost lights.
They did. They believe ghosts draw electromagnetic energy from the plant world, which is why they might project a radiant light. They also talked about ghost lights looking like small white balloons, often seen in cemetery photos.
Interesting theory. But the evidence Ed supposedly captured.
Yeah, this is a major point of skepticism. The YouTube source reviewing it called the video evidence bad high school level hoax quality.
Ouch.
Said it looked like Vaseline on the camera lens, which makes you wonder if that was his best evidence from 7 nights. What does that say?
Right. It raises questions about the standard of proof they considered acceptable.
Definitely. And that leads us nicely into the general criticisms, the broader skepticism about the Warrens.
Because it wasn't just about specific cases, was it? There were overarching critiques.
Absolutely. You see it a lot online, places like Reddit, people calling them frauds, con artists, even carnies, accusing them of having used the people they claim to help.
Strong words. What's the basis for those claims?
A lot of it comes down to that lack of verifiable evidence we keep bumping into. Critics say the Warrens never revealed original photos or videos that were truly convincing.
Or the evidence they did show was easily faked.
Exactly. Like that story Ed told about a demon burned a hole through an important tape, making it useless.
Convenient.
Right. And then he apparently said the burned tape was no longer in his possession. It just fuels suspicion.
And the financial motivation argument comes up again.
Always. Even if they didn't charge directly for investigations, critics argue they capitalized on misfortune, especially targeting financially struggling families.
Right.
The books, the lectures, the movie rights, it became a very profitable enterprise.
Did people who worked with them ever raise doubts?
Yes. Some authors who collaborated with the Warrens reported conflicting stories from Ed and Lorraine themselves. This led some to believe they exaggerated facts and outright lied.
So inconsistencies in their own accounts.
Apparently so. And then there are darker personal accusations.
Like what?
There was a very serious accusation that Ed Warren had a long-term sexual relationship starting when the girl was just 15, and that Lorraine knew and approved of it.
Whoa, that's a huge claim.
It is, and for many people, hearing something like that, true or not, drops belief in a case dramatically. It taints their entire image.
Understandably, what about their approach itself, their belief system?
That's another major critique, their staunch Catholic faith. Critics say they approached every case from a Christian viewpoint.
Meaning everything was demonic?
Pretty much, labeling every entity as demonic, which for some critics felt like it was just reinforcing their own beliefs, proving the Christian God and Satan exist.
And potentially limiting other explanations.
Exactly. Some felt it disempowers her audience using fear. Their fanatical Catholic stance, as some call it, definitely colored their interpretations.
And finally, we heard this in some cases, the claim that they actually made things worse.
Yes, some families involved directly claim the Warrens' interventions made things worse or angered the spirit.
So what does it tell us that despite their fame and claims of helping, they face such strong backlash, sometimes even from the families themselves?
I think it tells us the reality on the ground was incredibly complex, way more than just a simple good versus evil story.
Right.
For some people, the Warrens' religious framework might have been genuinely comforting. It gave them a structure to understand something terrifying.
But for others?
For others, maybe if their experience didn't fit that mold, the Warrens' approach could have felt dismissive, maybe even harmful. It really shows how personal these experiences are, how people cope differently, and how one interpretation doesn't fit all. Different approaches can lead to vastly different outcomes and legacies.
So wrapping this all up,
Hmm.
we've covered this incredible range of cases, haven't we? All the diverse phenomena they reported, but also the intense skepticism, the serious critiques.
Yeah, their legacy is definitely a complex tapestry. You've got these deeply impactful personal stories from families, narratives so compelling they spawned huge movies.
And then sharp, persistent criticism from skeptics.
Which really brings us back to that central question, doesn't it? Were Ed and Lorraine Warren genuinely these expert guides navigating the darkest corners of the paranormal?
Or were they maybe masterful storytellers, people who created this incredibly compelling mythology, for better or worse, that just completely captured the public's imagination?
It's the core dilemma.
And look, regardless of where you personally land on that belief spectrum,
Hmm.
you have to admit, their stories still fascinate us, right? They challenge how we see reality.
They really do. They make you think about that fine line between belief, actual experience, and how we interpret it all.
Definitely food for thought.
And maybe a final thought for you, the listener. When these stories of the unknown, when they last for decades, when they evolve like the Warrens cases have, what does that persistence tell us about ourselves? About our own minds, our fears, and maybe our deep, enduring fascination with the unseen world?